I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Yes, indeed. What's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like right here at Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Very happy to be your host. Please, for those who are here live, invite folks to jump on in. And for those who are checking this out later, thank you for doing so and invite others to join you then. Same thing for all the podcast platforms that we're on. Please do invite people to check us out there. Let them know that it's possible to get these shows wherever they get their podcasts. And thank you for doing that. Please hit us up, of course, at blackpowermedia.org and support the Patreon. Hit the bell to make sure you get all the notifications when we go live and things are happening, because so much is and will continue. Yeah, right on. Greetings, Anthony, Joshua, good morning. That's right. Oh, Josh, yeah, good morning. Yeah. Good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you for jumping in. And welcome, Sionke. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Thank you for joining the channel. Absolutely. I hope everybody is doing at least relatively well. It's good to see folks jumping in. Same to you, Brother King. Thank you very much. Geechee Motivator in the building. Good to see you. Yeah, we got a lot going on this morning. So, in fact, we have a few guests coming through, and I expect any moment that will start. Saludos también, Deborah. Amadi, good morning. Obioma, peace, peace, peace. So, but I guess what I'm going to do is well, because we're going to talk with Dedrick Muhammad is going to come through this morning. And then in the second hour, Evan Auguste, I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly, is going to join us from the Association of Black Psychologists to talk about their recent refusal to accept the apology of the American Psychological Association. And we're going to talk with Dedrick Muhammad, who is, of course, just now jumping in. And I want to do that to talk about a number of things. And with him, we're going to talk about a number of things, including some recent discussions Glenn Greenwald has been having around cryptocurrency that I've been checking out, including with one of our colleagues, Andray, Domise, and I think it speaks to a lot of the mythology that surrounds the topic and around our understanding of the economy and what can be done about it. And thanks to everybody who's been sending me more than I can keep up with at the moment. All that has been going on. Rappers jumping in here more with please check out our thing on NFTs and Tory Lanez, non-fungible tokens and Tory Lanez, because there's apparently many more rappers doing the same thing. Yeah, Glenn Greenwald. Anyway, we're going to get into that. In fact, let's do that now. Let me just introduce again, friend of the show, longtime friend of me personally, somebody I've learned a lot and continue to learn a lot about the economy and race and the racial wealth divide We don't call it a gap anymore. And so much more. And of course, I'm talking about Dedrick Muhammad, who, among many other things, serves as the chief of membership policy and equity for NCRC, whose name the acronym I keep forgetting, which National Coalition Reinvestment, anyways, he'll explain that to us in a second. But anyway, but somebody who writes a lot about, of course, and talks a lot about the racial wealth divide and helps us understand all that. So again, welcome back to the show, Dedrick Muhammad. Good morning. Good to see you, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here. I'm gonna have to have you start using my Institute for Policy Studies title. I think the show's too radical for NCRC. We get funded by too many banks over there. We have to use the IPS title.
All right, what's the title at IPS?
I don't know. I'm like senior fellow or just fellow at Institute for Policy Studies.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll use that one. That's not fun.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so scratch what I just said. He is the senior something policy something at Institute for Policy Studies.
Yes, sir.
Where of course we know our dear brother Netfa Freeman is and has been for a long time, and some other good folks as well. So anyway, man, it's good to see you again. Thanks for joining us. And so where do you want to start this morning? Did you want to start with the Latino buying power piece, or do you want to? Because I know I invited you to join this crypto thing with me, and I have a lot of notes on what Glenn Greenwald has been saying, and the discussion he had with my man Andray as well. But let me know what you want to start with, and I'll pull that up.
Yeah, let me just start off with like 5 seconds on the newest, or 30 seconds on the newest unemployment data, and then we can go to the crypto. We can talk a little bit about Latinos. I think one of the more interesting thing about Latino, I did a Latino snapshot just to look at Latinos and the racial wealth divide. But I think one of the more interesting things, particularly for your show, is one of the myths that are being utilized to try to, I don't know, so it kind of connects to your Black buying power myth. Actually it is. It's pretty much a Latino buying power myth that I would like to get a little bit into, and then we can get into crypto. And there's a paper too I found that was paid by PayPal called "Reducing the Financial Health Gap: The Opportunity for Responsible FinTech," and that's interesting. I just want to bring that up to you, and maybe we can deconstruct that maybe another time. But I just want to highlight a little bit to you.
No, I appreciate that, and that fits in with something we'll end up talking about as I pull this up. This is the Washington Post story.
Yes.
Locked out of traditional financial industry, more people of color are turning to cryptocurrency. But one of the arguments that some who want to promote crypto are saying is they talk about the independence, the autonomy, the encryption, and the ability to overturn what exists. But what they are leaving out more and more and more is the already existing position that billionaires and elite banking institutions and financial institutions have in cryptocurrency, and increasingly so investing. And then to your point about PayPal and all of them, and doing encouraging it as well, because they see it as something that they can take advantage of, despite what many would like to claim as its revolutionary potential. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into this. I have some notes on this one as well. So let me know. But so let's get into it.
Great. Well, so just real quick on the unemployment data, I think what is interesting that came out last Friday is that Black unemployment went down to close to a little bit below the record low that happened under Trump, which no one wants to mention because Trump is bad. Affiliated with Trump is bad, what have you. But and the record low is 6.7%, right? And I think what's interesting on that, again, actually, 6.7%, I won't just dismiss it. Like, that is, white is 3.7%, so it's still much higher than white unemployment. And when people are talking about overall the economy is at full employment, because overall economy is, like 4.1% unemployment, still obviously Black people are not near full employment. And I think, the major push is, are we going to keep pushing the economy to create jobs, or are we going to celebrate now and say, well, good, now we're fine. We don't need to take financial or take government actions that will increase unemployment. I mean, that will increase employment because the economy is doing great, because that's usually what happens. And we're still left with this deficit, nowhere near being fully employed, and all that, continues, income inequality in income, inequality in wealth. But it is interesting to note that Black unemployment's at this low point, though Bill Spriggs, an economist at Howard, does point out the unemployment rate for high school dropouts is 5%. So Blacks still have just a significantly higher unemployment rate than high school dropouts as a whole, even though most African Americans obviously are not high school dropouts. So anyway, just want to get that out of the way, and now we can jump in.
And again, that those unemployment figures don't count people who have stopped looking for work, who maybe or whoever are looking for work and often anyway.
No, that's right. It doesn't.
I just lost my thought for a second, but sorry.
Yeah, no, it doesn't include those who are, who might say, well, look, I'm only making $15 an hour, $12 an hour. It makes more sense for me to stay home with the kids because we spend $20 an hour on childcare, right? Or it doesn't take into account institutionalized populations. It doesn't take into account, the incarcerated or what have you. I think I didn't look at the data. I mean, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think Black employment to population ratio, I think, is like it's around 60%, which means 40% of 20 years old and older aren't even in the job market, quote unquote. So yes, there's still a lot more people who don't have work, and we could also look at the wages that African Americans make. I think people really get confused that it's around, the median household income for African Americans, $45,000, right around there. So again, that's household. That's not the median salary for an individual. It's the household is $45,000, and all of us can relate, even though some of us are probably in that situation, that $45,000 for your household is seriously economically struggling. So for whites, it's about $70,000. Which isn't balling. It's significantly more.
Right.
70,000 for a household isn't balling either.
No, I mean, it doesn't. Obviously, it doesn't help people suffering the most. But when we're having an honest analysis or an objective as much as possible analysis, I do try to remind people that the system isn't necessarily working for a majority of whites either. To the extent that it works for them, it's only because it's so much worse for so many of the rest of us. So it's. Yeah.
And just one thing to add to that, though, I think, 70,000 for whites isn't, it's barely financial stability. Where whites are much more stronger is in wealth, right? Where the median wealth for white households, I think, is around $160,000 compared to Blacks that are at, I think, 9,000 now. So, that's where the significant difference, and that's why there's much more financial stability. Even though the income isn't great, 170 versus 9, much more financial stability. You're not balling, but it's much more financial stability than.
I'm not saying that they're doing just as bad. I'm just saying they're only doing better because they have a whole bunch of us that they can push beneath them, and that's the
that's the basis of our economy.
So what are you seeing in this particular article here? Because I saw a couple of things that definitely fit in with my own views and approach to this topic. But what are you seeing in this post article about more so-called people of color and cryptocurrency that you thought was interesting?
Well, let me just take back before we get into cryptocurrency, because what they're doing is they're trying to 21st centurize a game they were playing before, when the idea that finance is the way, like, okay, we're going to acknowledge that there's racial economic inequality. So then we're going to jump into finance, right? It used to be financial education. And then they said, okay, you have to do more than financial education. So now we start talking about different lending products. And like, as someone was coming into the field, I was like, well, why are we assuming the major issue is lending? I mean, I get why they say financial education, because generally that's just a way to not deal with the issue, right? It's like we won't actually redistribute resources. We'll just say, learn more and you'll do better, right? So I understood it was wrong, but I understood that. But then I understood the lending piece, because almost everyone funding these initiatives are banks. And so what what do banks want to do? Well, banks want to say, okay, well, all we can do for society is loan you money and maybe give you a little bit less interest rate, or maybe take a little less of a fee off of, at best, working class people. I mean, one thing people don't even understand, the financial industry is not created to help the average American. The financial industry is created to help wealthy people become wealthier, not just because they love wealthy people, but that's where the money is, right? Like you don't make money generally off of, the masses of people. Like I think Jamie Dimon, who I've met several times and do a lot with JP Morgan Chase, actually, but he once said something about,
that's interesting.
If you don't have $300,000, something like this, $300,000, some really high number, like we don't even need your business, right? And I appreciated that, because I was like, well, yeah, you're just saying finally the truth. Like, this is where you make your money off of. You don't make money off of, Black people median wealth $9,000. That includes the asset, the value of your home. So it's not like we have $9,000 in a bank account. So like that's definitely most Black people. Like, you're not even helpful a customer. So anyway, all of this just to say that there's been a game that's been played for a while about finance is the way to help poor people, versus what you need to help poor people is give them more income, give them more wealth, give them more assets like education, what have you. And then you can start. Finance is only helpful when you're economically stable and you have a little bit extra, that then you can figure out, okay, how do I invest the extra? Finance doesn't help you pay your bills generally. Debt can help you pay your bills for a little bit, but then you're in more debt. So anyway, that was the 20th century game. Now the 21st century game is like, oh, well, now it's fintech. Now it's cryptocurrency. And this is the 21st, century idea of how we're going to solve the racial wealth divide without actually addressing the racial wealth divide. So to me, that's the context that this article is being written in. So now they're trying to be like, oh, the old financial industry was bad. Now the new financial industry, this will solve all of our problems.
Right.
That's like, no, it's going to be the same thing, right? It's going to be the exact, which I have nothing against cryptocurrency, right? If you're lucky and you got a little extra money and you buy Bitcoin at a low space and it goes up a whole bunch, okay, like great, you know what I mean? But it's no different than getting lucky on a stock or what have you. But that's not a way of community economic development. There's no group of people that are moving forward in terms, by lucky investments.
Yeah, I mean, again, as I keep saying, and it's not that I'm opposed to Black business or crypto or blockchain or some technology per se. It's that I am, although I might be opposed to the technology if we really got into it, but I am opposed to the claim that it is this collective solution, which it is increasingly being used to be said to be. And what I thought was, and not to skip too much ahead or whatever, but within this article, I thought it was another brilliant example of how a lot of commercial journalism and just journalism, even I've seen in the non-commercial spaces, works these days. That or has often worked. One singular example of one success story. So to your point, if you go to the casino and interview the winner, at the roulette table, it's going to sound a whole lot different than if you interview all of the hundreds and thousands of losers. And they clearly found a winner.
You go to the drug dealer who was successful, able to retire, not end up in jail. Okay, I mean, that worked for them, but like that's not a way of mass economic improvement. Though actually, I think, I don't promote drug trading, but I do think drug trading has actually probably done more investment in working class Black people than probably crypto. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, there's so much.
Now there's the headline. There it is, everybody. There's the new tagline right there. The new tag. Dedrick Muhammad says drug dealing is better than crypto. Drug dealing has done more for Black people than crypto.
I think I think no one wants that headline, but I think probably it's true. I think if you did an analysis, you're going to see that
I might start using it.
Money have gone in to start legitimate Black businesses, what have you. But they get you eventually. You know what I mean? They bring you down eventually. Right. But anyway, this is why I'm going under Institute for Policy Studies, not under my. Keep me going.
Well, look, just as this, a couple of things that I highlighted from this, it starts off by saying, just to the point I was making, it wasn't their dog walking business or the food stand or their decision to drop out of college that ended up saving the Lopez twins' parents from financial ruin when the 2 mortgages on their home became too much. What an interesting opening sentence, by the way. It wasn't the dog walking business or the food stand or the decision to drop out of college that ended up saving the Lopez twins' parents from financial ruin when the 2 mortgages on their home came to.
Isn't that really interesting that they look at dropping out of college as almost something that should have been economically beneficial? Like, that's fascinating. I mean, this article is fascinating. Yeah, and then they're saying it's not their entrepreneur, because usually they put entrepreneurship will save everyone, right? Which is also true. I'm not against entrepreneurship. I do a little entrepreneurship, but it doesn't save everyone. But they're saying entrepreneurship doesn't work. Dropping out of college doesn't work. Kind of like, why would dropping out of college work? And now go ahead, you can continue. We'll see what does work.
What does work, apparently, it was Penelope and America Lopez's investments in cryptocurrency that eventually allowed them to pay off one of those mortgages. Then actually, I'm just now noticing it only paid off one of the mortgages. Then when the pandemic hit, both parents lost their jobs. The sisters helped to step up again. It was our rock bed of financial investments that we made the past couple of years that helped us get through both crises, America Lopez said. The sisters, known as the Cyber Code twins, paid off one of their parents' mortgages in 2017 after cashing out their Bitcoin to the tune of $100,000, she said. At the beginning of this year, they invested $300 in non-fungible tokens, NFTs, another type of digital asset. They sold about half the NFTs and made about $90,000 in cryptocurrency, she said. So again, I mean, yes, I'm glad that they were able to help their family and everything. But again, just even rereading these numbers once more here, I'm struck by how they're not that big.
No, but that's right. That's right. It's 190,000, which I would love to have, but like,
sure, I don't have it. I would love it.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not generational wealth. I mean, and pretty much it's just paying debt.
Yeah, that's it.
Like, it's just paying debt. Like, they don't even. It's not even. They can take that $100,000 and do further investing with it. So maybe in 20 years, and I do think one other interesting thing is what's really saving is multi-generational economic unit coming together to support each other at different times, right? The parents took care of the kids through this hard work, what have you, and taking care of the kids. And then the kids stepped in when, and that's a kind of really community solidarity that's needed in a capitalist system, just to try to keep you going, not even to ball, just so you don't lose your house, that you have 2 mortgages on. So anyway.
No, right on. Cryptocurrency, continuing here, says started out as mostly a hobby for tech-savvy financial wizards who had money to play with, cultivating an image of its users as young white Bitcoin bros. But today, a growing number of Americans of color are participating in the $2 trillion global industry as a way to build wealth outside the traditional banking system, which many say has historically excluded and discriminated against their communities, end quote. By the way, Dedrick, check me on this. When this article is saying they're using the Lopez's example to talk about a way to say that this is a way that people, so-called people of color, are building wealth. You just explained that that's not what the Lopez example is demonstrating. They're not building wealth. They're paying off debt. So even in the one example this article is using to promote crypto, they're not describing it as wealth production, unless you can argue that, I don't know, unless the formula to assess someone's wealth when you draw down your debt adds to your wealth. But I mean, all they're doing, they're not. Anyway.
No. And it shows the problem of the racial wealth divide, that even when you're lucky and you do things right, you're not able to use it as an asset to really, move you radically forward. It's helping to maintain your existence, right? So that's, I think, really interesting. And also, never trust an article when they say it's. Look at where they use numbers, right? A growing number of Americans of color. give me some numbers here. What are you talking? I mean, that could be 5 to 10. You know what I mean? Like, what are
Right.
you talking about? How many millions of Americans of color are? Then they say participating in the $2 trillion global industry. Okay, that's a big number. But how much of the $2 trillion industry is owned by people of color? No number there, right? So like,
and spoiler alert, just as a spoiler alert for this article, they don't produce any of those numbers here. Right. So like, when it's not like we're you know. By the way, when you made that point about J.P. Morgan a minute ago, it reminded me of the film The Big Short, which I love and may even rewatch again today. But there's that scene where the two white boys, the two young wannabe investors, show up to have a meeting with J.P. Morgan, and they're not even allowed out of the lobby. They literally have the meeting with some low-level rep in the lobby because the point is they don't have enough to get to get on J.P. Morgan's platform. They're thinking they've built this little, you know, trading company. They're going to get on, you know, and the dude is like, you need like a minimum of whatever the number is. And it was way off, you know, more to your point. JP Morgan's like, I don't have time for these little bits of money that you think you've done well.
That's like, you know, the four big banks, JP Morgan, Chase, Citi, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo. JP Morgan, Chase, and Citi, they don't deal with generally in massive amounts, you know, not even average, middle income, middle to high income people. That's mostly Wells Fargo, a little bit Bank of America. Wells Fargo actually does mortgages to, you know, most homeowners, which is still kind of higher income. But Citi and JP Morgan Chase, they're not focused on like, you know, mid-tier mortgages. They're focused on those who have a real wealth portfolio.
Hold on, DJ. Okay, I think we got you there, Dan. I think you froze just a second, but yeah, I think we got there. I think we got the point though. And by the way, when I looked at it, and I think I put this in the Buying Power book. I can't remember, but there was. I looked at if you look at those top 3 banks that you just mentioned alone, they have more in deposits than all of the so-called people of color banks combined, not just black-owned banks, but Latino, Asian, everybody else. I think the total came to like 156 banks when I was looking at it. And if you took all of their money and put them into one super bank, they wouldn't even crack the top 15 of banks, period. But those 3 alone that you mentioned, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America, I mean, they wouldn't even. It's not comparable is really the point I'm getting at.
I was reading some data. What was it? Black banks, I think only had like 53. If you put them all together, maybe had $53 billion of assets, while Wells Fargo alone had, I forget, 2-3 trillion or something like that. Just by itself, Wells Fargo completely overwhelms all the black banks put together. Which, I mean, sorry. When I say all the black banks, there's not that many. There's only like a dozen.
There's only, or is that less? Well, when I was counting, there was 23, which was the same number that existed in 1969, and it may have gone down. 23? This was for the buying. So this would have been in 2019. You said, when did I count them?
Yeah. That's right.
So 2019, 2020, somewhere around like that year is when I was looking at it. So and that was at the time of that I submitted the manuscript. It was, I think, 23, which was the same number. The point is, it was the same numbers in 1969. There had been literally not one more bank created in that time, and I think it's actually gone down. And then I might have even overstated it by including credit unions.
That would be different.
In that, which I do think expands the number. But the point is, they're not working with enough, or certainly the same amount of revenue. I mean, they don't have, any. By the way, before I forget, they don't have the cat. Look, if the next time you see your boy Jamie Dimon, tell him we appreciated the knee he took in front of that vault, but we would much more appreciate it if he opened the vault. Just I always remember that picture when he took the knee for George Floyd in front of his vaults, and I was like,
did he do
open the vaults?
I forgot.
Oh yeah, he did. Oh no, yeah, he did. He and his crew. in front of their big, beautiful vault. And I was like, how telling. I was like, open it, Jamie, open it. Anyway.
Yeah, and actually that is working on is looking at these major financial institutions and seeing, as they say, they're giving, 50 million, 100 million, $1 billion toward addressing racial wealth divide. What does that really look like? And are they, doing things that we think are substantive, even though, that's also playing into the game. I'm all for private industry doing as much as they can, but it's going to take, government expenditure to really deal with this huge issue. But anyway.
That's right. No, that's right. And by the way, this is another little media literacy or critical media literacy lesson for the boys and girls in the audience. Is that if you read beyond the headline of most stories, many articles will even end up contradicting the headline itself. Not that I'm saying that happened quite that way in this article, but to the point I'm getting at is that despite the introduction of all of this, people of color, so-called, rushing into the crypto world, they do include later on in the article a little bit of this, where they say, but financial and economics experts caution that one-off success stories like the Lopez's belie the risk involved in the cryptocurrency market. Now, let me just continue on. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Why do they lead with that? If they're saying experts that do finance are like, well, one-off stories, don't really give you a good analysis, then why is your title, your whole setup based around a one-off positive analysis? I mean, we know why, because you wanted to give because I guess it's not an interesting story. Oh, cryptocurrency is not doing much for Black and brown people, as most Black and brown people, think. Like, that's not much of a story. So they have to set it up like there's some debate or some tension, or like, oh, well, is this?
It goes back to what I think you were saying at the beginning, that this is the new way. And I would paraphrase, if I may, your opening point, which was that this is the new way to convince people that this economic system can work. So the broad message from commercial presses has to be, it can't be that capitalism is wrong and will fail. It has to be that this is yet another way for you, if you are smart and responsible, to overcome your economic reality. That's what I think. And then I do think there's even a since the pandemic hit, and I should do the research on this or find someone else who has already done it. But I think there has been an increased effort to promote the economic potential of this system, or the potential for this system to help people since the pandemic, where more people started raising questions about what the hell was going on with this economic system that can bail out some when it wants, but not others. We're not competing with other parts of the world in terms of supporting working people, so on and so on. So to combat that, there is just this increased effort to remind people, no. We don't need a new economic system. We don't need to set safety nets and all that kind of stuff. You just should get into your small businesses and get into crypto. So,
and actually, just to ride that, I don't know if it's conspiracy theory, but to ride that idea out a little farther, I will dive into a conspiracy theory and say, and it could be that really what the system is nervous about is the country showed what it could do by giving out money to.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's it.
Right? Like they did it. We did it. I can't believe America did it. We did it under Trump, under a Republican president, Senate, Congress. We continued under Biden, Democratic establishment, to give out masses of money. It really helped people during a stalling of the economy and the worst international health pandemic, at least that's affected the Western world and the US in our lifetimes. And it worked well, but we don't want people to get used to that. Oh, no, don't keep thinking the government can give you money and make your life better and that you don't have to work all the time and make just for a few dollars. No, go back into entrepreneurship, go back into cryptocurrency, work 3 or 4 jobs like you were before. So it's trying to make us forget what we just did successfully for the last couple years.
Yeah, and even that little bit that was given out wasn't, pales in comparison to what even certainly the other so-called first world countries are doing, and even some of the so-called developing world has been doing. I even hear what, like even Panama, where I hear a little bit about, has done more in terms of, they don't have as much, but relatively speaking, they've done more to support their community, their people, through this crisis than this country has, with far more resource. So, and then even then, the messaging almost immediately became, look at all of these people scamming the PPP loans. Yeah. And then it became like, even students in my classes were like, yeah, man, my homeboy was getting over on, and was taking advantage and was making more off the PPP loan than they were off of, their job, and making more off of unemployment than they were off of their actual job. And I'm saying, that is the point. That should be the point that spark. If you're working and you can't make as much as when you're not working, and the government can come in and support you in a higher, that shows you how jacked up the system is. Not that you should be pointing at the people who are ripping off the system, so-called. The system is itself ripping them off and us off, and we could anyway.
Because they buy into the myth that somehow you're ripping off the system if you're managing to live and not work yourself to death for poverty wages. Like that somehow because I'm sure their friend who got over, I bet you they don't have that much money. You know what I mean? Like,
of course not.
I bet it meant that they could, do DoorDash a few more times a week, right? And
that's what I'm saying. It went from they went from them making $500 a month to $600 a month. Okay, I mean, it's not like that's the whole. It was the whole 1980s welfare queen mythology again. There go all those Negroes living off of welfare, just chilling, and it's like, what are you talking about?
And one thing about this article, and I think much more, one thing that has changed over the last few years is everyone talks about racial economic inequality, the racial wealth divide. And one of the things that I do in my presentations on the racial wealth divide is always try to highlight that there's a belief that, what's your starting point? Is your starting point that the system works and that people are doing something wrong, or there's something wrong with them and you got to fix them to get them into a functioning system? Or is your understanding that the system is broken, or your system doesn't work for the people, and that we need to change the system in order so that it does work for the people? And most of this racial wealth divide analysis is coming out now. It didn't used to be so. A lot of the people that were doing it earlier on, including people like Derek Hamilton and some other people I won't say because they're kind of made it an establishment. I don't know if my putting out their name will help them or hurt them, so I'll leave them alone. But Derek can handle it. Had an understanding that the system was messed up. We needed to fix the system. But most of this new literature is coming out is this idea that the system works. We just have to now fix the people, right? And the people, for some reason, aren't doing cryptocurrency enough. So we got to fix them to do more cryptocurrency. And then it works in this beautiful system we have now with cryptocurrency and whatever that, I don't understand that. Was it NFTAs or whatever they are? Like
NFTs,
non-fungible
tokens. So when I actually got into this, when I was looking at the rapper Tory Lanez got into NFT to put his new album out as an NFT. And was promoting it as how he broke the hip hop and the music industry, and he's going to change the world. And then we find out that what he's really doing is to get the NFT, to get his album, you have to get on the Ethereum crypto through this one entity. And I forgot, people can check. I'll put the video in the link, the show notes here. That you had to get on Ethereum through this other white dude's platform. So someone else just sent me on Twitter, and I'll get into this later. Other rappers are doing the same thing, but what it really is just it's a sort of, I don't know, like a trap door to get people to get on to somebody's crypto. You sign up for Ethereum or Dogecoin or Bitcoin or whoever, and then get on someone's particular digital wallet or digital platform. So like Money Man, this rapper that was doing it is working through OpenSea, that platform. And so it's creating these. So people keep saying blockchain is going to get rid of the middle, and I'm going to come back to this in a few minutes. But it's going to get rid of the middleman of the bank, but the middleman has quickly become white venture capitalist platforms and digital wallet platforms through which you have to go to buy these Bitcoin, these cryptocurrencies, and then to get to these NFTs. And then the NFT is just another way of creating something in the digital world that venture capitalists and investors would have to support you with by buying. So in other words, it's replicating in the digital world what we have seen historically, maybe in the art world, where you have to look for elite financiers to fund and support artists through buying their work to produce more work. So my point is, it doesn't redistribute wealth that we all help create. It's just another avenue that allows people, if they get lucky or if they can attract certain levels of investment, to do well. And it's just replicating that. It's the same thing on another.
People confuse. I made a lot of money off of it, so now everybody will. But if you're serious about this, you understand, like, particularly a lot of rappers, people like, entertainers, artists, you have a whole bunch of money, that you got, for your artistic endeavor, that, you might have $100,000, $500,000. That, again, median household income for Blacks is like $45,000. When you got your $500,000 up front, which isn't a huge amount of money in the scheme of things, but it's a lot of money up front, you might have taken $50,000 and you did something with it. You had investment, you were able to get some returns. You were lucky, you got big returns. But that's not a solution for the masses of people who don't have $500,000 that allows them to pay their daily expenses for the next year or so. And
who even has $500 to invest and do it? So this is why I highlighted these paragraphs here in this article, because I think this gets to some of what we were just talking about, and it does this in a slick, even for a media literacy lesson, does some slick stuff here. So we've already sort of made this point, but look at what they say here in the first paragraph in yellow. A survey last summer by NORC at the University of Chicago found 13% of Americans reported having purchased or traded cryptocurrencies in the past 12 months. Of those, 44% were non-white, 41% were women, and 35% had annual household incomes of less than $60,000. The average trader was under 40 and did not have a college degree, according to the survey. In all of those numbers, and I read through the rest of the article specifically to look for it, in all of those numbers, they don't tell you how well or not any of these people did.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Can we break down 44% of 13%? Right.
That's right.
Right. So you're talking about maybe 6% were non-white. Now that's not Black. That's non-white. Right.
Correct.
So maybe Blacks are 2%, maybe 3%. I don't know, something like that. And we're 13% of the population. So in this other area, we again are massively underrepresented in cryptocurrency. That's what you should pull out of that. But they play around with 44%. You start thinking that's high. But it's 44% of 13%. Like it's
no, you make a great point, but I still think, I think both of our points are equally valid here, because they also don't tell you how well or not these people did. So they didn't tell you, they might not have told you that of that 6% who were Black, 90% lost everything. The remaining 10% saw minimal returns or whatever. Like they don't tell you how much they invested. They don't tell you anything.
Yeah, I bought a little in crypto, right? And I don't know, maybe I made $10 of it. Maybe it's $10. Maybe it's gone down $10. But I mean, so what? Like it's not changing my economic condition in any way. So I think that is.
Or maybe you became a millionaire, but how does that help the rest of us?
I can tell you, I didn't. I can tell you, I did become a millionaire. But that is the most important point. Just because you bought into crypto doesn't mean that it's done anything for you economically.
So then in the second paragraph here, it is they go on, quote, it is true the traditional financial system has not provided access and frankly exploited Black people, said Derek Hamilton, professor of economics and urban policy at the New School. But the remedy isn't to turn to another vulnerable system, however well-intended it may or may not be. The remedy is a public sector that ensures they have access in an equitable way, end quote. Now, Derek Hamilton, friend of the show, and I believe we're going to get him back on in January. Again, makes a point in it sounds like a more professional, responsible way than I put it, but it sounds to be the same thing, that you need federal policy, you need a redistribution of wealth, you need a recognition that all of us contribute to the total pile of wealth made through all of our engagement and interaction. And it's policy that chooses to, that determines where that ends up. And as Derek Hamilton is saying, to the point we were making earlier, here's this financial expert buried in within the article telling you this is, this is just not a collective solution to a collective problem. But I think you make a good point. Instead of starting with that or highlighting that point, they choose to put the other frame on it.
And I mean, to me, it's one of the positive things that have come out of kind of racial wealth divide movement or what have you, is you have some, decently progressive, intelligent people who establishment has to go to, like a Derek Hamilton, sometimes a Mercer Baradaran, or what have you, to include. Now they might put it in the middle, and they won't they won't allow that to change their headline. But it's like, oh no, we quoted Derek and we put his thing, which a lot of people, to them, is going to be boring, right? Like, public sector, what can the individual do with that? You know what I mean? Like, but most people, it's much more enticing. So all I got to do is spend $50 in crypto and I could become a millionaire. Let me do that. And I get that, and I think the left has to do more about what does, personal finance mean for individuals, because like people do need to survive, right? I think there is a history of that. Like, everybody talks about the Black Panther breakfast program. People need to survive now. So what type of economic survival programs are we developing for our people as we're working for them to the larger solution, which is, kind of policy change. So anyway.
Well, Jeff Bezos's owned media arm is not going to promote public sector involvement in saving the world. They're going to, but going on here just a little bit more with this article, the value of cryptocurrency is based on supply and collective demand and not backed by federal government or items of value, with the exception of stable coins. This is a point I wanted to come back to, and we will in just a moment when I talk specifically about this Glenn Greenwald piece. But this is something that crypto defenders keep promoting, that I keep saying is a mistake, that simply because the current banking system has been used against us, and most people, in fact, doesn't mean the idea of a regulated economy is a bad thing, per my estimation. That I don't want a situation where customers don't have any protection because they're buying things from anonymous, encrypted transactions, that there's no recourse if they get ripped off. And as we're going to show in a few minutes, people are getting ripped off plenty. But this idea that we would want a marketplace where we don't know who we're buying from, we can't find out, we can't talk to them if something goes wrong, we don't know who we're selling to, if for whatever reason. Like, I don't think that's the way to go here. Yet people keep saying that this is what is supposed to be a revolutionary part of the blockchain technology.
But the funny thing is, that's a revolutionary part of the crypto, currency, but no one wants to be revolutionary. Like, I get if there's some black underground group that is robbing banks and needs to put the money somewhere so they can buy more guns because they're working to overthrow. Okay, use crypto. I get it, and that's why people were doing illegal action. Yeah, I get it. Use crypto, but but how does that help you who are paying your taxes every day? Who are working, it's not that helpful. And I think your point about, again, federal regulation is very important, because we have regulation on banks because banks were so exploiting people, and banks still exploit people, but at least now they can get checked somewhat, right? And there's some type of bounds. With the cryptocurrency, there's no bounds off the private sector interests that are running it. So, people just confuse things. Like, again, if you want to use crypto to hide your money, okay, just know you're doing illegal stuff, and the government's going to get you eventually. You know what I mean?
Just know, as I'm going to show in a few minutes, that it's not as safe and protected as people keep claiming, and that if you get ripped off, there's no recourse. At least if somebody goes into the bank and robs your bank account, you are federally insured and protected. You don't lose everything. And theoretically, they might catch the person, and in which case, whatever was stolen might be returned as well. With the crypto theft, none of that's happening.
Well, and you don't have to be ripped off. I've heard, like, I never bought actual Bitcoin because it's like, yeah, you get a wallet, you got this passcode. I heard all these people like, oh yeah, I bought it early on. I have $100,000 worth, but I don't know my code and I can't get it. And like, there's all, so it's like you didn't get ripped off. You just lost your code. You can't. I was like, that's too complicated.
That's another way. That's right.
Like, I lose my car keys every other day. Like, I don't need to lose
every other day. How many passwords, right?
But hey.
But anyway,
I'm gonna have to go in like 10 minutes because I gotta make my kids breakfast.
All right, no problem. I'm running over anyway. I'll get into the Greenwald thing on my own in a second.
I want to talk about the Greenwald thing, but go ahead.
well, let's do it. Okay, well, let's then. Okay, just real quick. So with Derek Hamilton again buried here in the whole thing, he's just simply saying again, it's a seductive and exploitive situation. It does not. This whole thing about pulling us up by our bootstraps, as he says, is an attractive feature of the structure we have. But he's saying it's it's without resources at its base, as is the case with the bootstraps mythology. And as Devin Springer pointed out to me some time ago, I give them credit on this. How could you pull yourself up with your bootstraps? First of all, pulling the analogy is fraudulent. You literally cannot pull yourself up by your bootstraps. So even in its analogy, it's false. There is no. Anyway, so okay. Did you want to start with anything on the Greenwald stuff? And for folks who aren't aware, we're talking about a discussion that Glenn Greenwald had on one of his programs. The popular white left libertarian, I think he self-defines, journalist, help expose the Ed Snowden, a whole bunch of other stuff. On his new podcast, he did an interview with the Bitcoin Socialist, which I thought was interesting. In terms of bringing a left discussion to crypto, but I thought all of the same mythologies were involved in the conversation. And then in another conversation, also linked below, I have the audio podcast of Glenn talking with my man Andray Domise in their new collaborative project about crypto, where many of the same arguments that Glenn offers in the other interview are made as well. So, but go ahead, say whatever point, bring up the points you wanted to bring up, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'll just start off with two. I mean, one thing, I think it is interesting, Glenn Greenwald has this, he seems to have some idea that he can kind of get past ideology, and that if we can get some type of, and again, I have plenty of critiques of the liberal establishment, clearly, and of the left, and what I call the left and white liberal, but that he's going to be able to bring together, all anti-establishment forces in some type of unity to overthrow the system. And I think, and he doesn't say it, but I think it's like white anti-establishment forces, and that's why he can go on Tucker Carlson and do all these things. And again, I'm not against him going on Tucker Carlson. I don't think Tucker Carlson's that much worse than CNN. So go wherever you want. But I just think that's an interesting myth in his head that I think is not true. What was interesting to me about the crypto socialist, or whatever we'll call it, the Bitcoin socialist, I never heard him explain how his use of crypto is going to get us to socialism. I never heard it. I heard him saying people are dismissing crypto and won't look at it, and there might be some positive uses. Okay, there might be some positive uses. And he even said in it that crypto by itself won't bring forth the revolution. Okay, 100% agree. But I never quite understood. So why what do you think how is crypto helpful in advancing your socialism? It never came up in a pretty long discussion.
In a very long discussion, you see here, I pulled it up, and folks can check the links below or to see the whole thing. But it was almost 90 minutes in discussion, and I kept waiting for the same thing. And they don't get there. There's never a point. The closest they come to it in the conversation is around the broad idea of decentralization, of decentralizing power. That when you can circumvent banks, you can circumvent centralized power. But to the point I was making earlier, I don't have a problem. And Andray really gets to this point, because Andray, coming at this as an overt communist, makes the point that I want centralized power. I just want it to be in the controls of the people. And sort of, that's my point. I don't want a decentralized situation where everybody's just out here in some wild west of commercial exchange. That's not and wealth creation. I want a controlled, centralized democratic, perhaps, but centralized power source that organizes scientifically the creation of wealth and its distribution. So again, when in the video we attempted to play the other day with Kwame Ture breaking this down, the politics versus economics, his point I thought was perfect. We don't want a society where people can rush off to individually accumulate wealth and buy their own house. We want a society that says that says, how many houses do you need? And now we will build those houses for all of the people in society. That is what I'm trying to say. And this whole idea that getting around the banks is somehow circumventing this dominant, horrific centralized power and as a good thing is, I think, mistaken. Go ahead.
Well,
sorry.
And the whole house thing too, it buys into the myth that the reason people buy houses is based off their individual effort. Again, housing, most white people weren't majority homeowners until the government created these systems that allow you to buy a house for 10% down, 20% down. Black people, I think it was 60% of our home buying is using FHA or VA loans.
Right.
We only have to put 3% down. It's actual government subsidy, government subsidized finance that is allowing us to be homeowners. It is government retirement that allows people to retire without poverty, called Social Security. And when I say government, it's not that I'm for the government, but what I mean by that is really collective, organized efforts that allows for this type of wealth building for the masses, right? So it's interesting as you bring up this. I didn't think about it when I was listening to it, but this Glenn Greenwald interview, in many ways, his headline is the same thing as the Washington Post. I mean, like it's setting up this idea of is there a question that it's black, that it leads to liberation, crypto, and then but kind of never really gets to, well, what's the evidence? What's the evidence that crypto has helped anywhere in the world create a revolutionary government or redistributed wealth in any way? I've seen no evidence whatsoever about it. So why even it'd be kind of like saying, does me growing 3 more trees in my backyard, will that create greater economic security for most people? No one would ask that because it has nothing to do with each, because there's no evidence. Why would it? Right? Why would crypto create more wealth for the masses of people? There's no evidence of it, but we're still questioning it. And just by making that as a question, you give it legitimacy and you get more people interested in it.
No, you're right. And I listened to the whole interview carefully myself because I was waiting to see the same thing. And even to your point, the title of the video attracted me because I wanted to hear, and to his credit, because usually I'm very critical of folks like Glenn and others who won't interview people to their actual political left. This guy sounds like he's from Glenn's actual political left, but there is no explanation, to your point, of how crypto helps a socialist revolution, or redistribute wealth or help anything. I kept waiting and waiting and waiting, and they never got to it. So, so listen, I know you said you got to go. Let me just give you your last few minutes before I'll just continue on with this. But anything else that you would want to just say in closing and or reiterate? And of course, we'll encourage people to continue to follow your work at IPS and look forward to your next visit with us.
Yeah. If you want to see my work, I kind of keep everything at Bridging the Racial Wealth Divide at WordPress. If you just search for Bridging the Racial Wealth Divide WordPress, that has all of my newest information. And I think an overall takeaway I have from this is that there is, and actually I want to get into this more with you in the future. Sometimes I think there's a debate around politics or economics as a means toward, revolution or success, right? One, I think you're missing out something, right? It's politics, economics, and military, right? There's never, military is the way power is held. And it's usually the way it's taken. So it's those 3 things together. And I think it is together, right? I think, you're not going to, politics, you need economics. Economics that has some type of distribution mechanism, you need politics, right? And what guides that? And you're going to need military to kind of enforce that. And I think we don't get enough into that. But my overall takeaway is I just think that, we do need, I think, for kind of Black radicalism to figure out how to mix the, all right, here are the policies we want to advance. Now, what is the individual and community practice that gives us economic sustainability? Because here, I think here is one fundamental problem. I think even Black radical left, white left, what have you, we act like our revolution can bring forth a material level of prosperity that capitalist exploitation has brought forth. And my answer is it doesn't. Like, it can't. Like, It takes a massive amount of exploitation and suffering to bring to the level of wealth that you and I live in, and we're not balling in this economy, right? So we, there is going to be a morality at some point. When I spent time in Cuba, I was like, oh, I think this might be the level that you can live in without ridiculous amounts of mass exploitation and destroying the environment. And the truth is, many Americans are scared to think like that and don't want to live like that. And I think that's a challenge in our economic and political mobilizing.
Hey, a lot of good points there. I look forward to getting into it with you in the future, definitely. But Dedrick Muhammad, thanks again for joining us, and I appreciate you, man, and look forward to your next visit.
And I appreciate the network, man. I'm so glad you finally put it on podcast. I can finally listen to it in a way that I'm used to listening to things.
We did that for you, man. We did that for you. It was all a Dedrick Muhammad move right there, man.
All right.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks again, Dedrick. Take care. Peace, man. All right, everybody. Thanks again to Dedrick Muhammad. I'm going to continue here for a few minutes before we get to our next guest. I'm going to just beg Evan's forgiveness and patience, just to go over just a few more minutes, and then we're going to get into this discussion about the American Psychological Association and the Black Association, the Association of Black Psychologists, which should be a debate, but disagreement, at least for now. But anyway, I'm going to come back to that. Just give me a few more minutes, Brother Evan. I appreciate it and everybody's patience. Just want to finish this up here real quick. Okay. All right. So a few more points about this that Glenn Greenwald's back and forth here that I think are really relevant to this discussion and continue to inhibit our own discussion around crypto. One, Glenn, just going to go through my notes here quickly, and maybe we'll come back to this at another time. First, Glenn, as Dedrick was talking about, Glenn has this overarching goal of trying to find unifying points between the left and the right. That seems to be part of his mission right now. Admittedly, that is not my own. I'm more interested in organizing those who are already on the left. I'm primarily interested in having organizing around, starting specifically with Black communities and brown communities, organizing first, then beyond, and so on and so forth. But and certainly, I'm not interested at this point in engaging the right. And expanding my analysis to incorporate room for the right to join. But I think because of that, because Glenn, as he says, he doesn't understand the left's hostility to cryptocurrency. And I think that's because he is either new to the left, not really a part of the real left, doesn't understand the traditions of the left, and never engages certainly the Black radical left. So as he says himself, he was radicalized after Obama's election. He was part of the group that thought Obama was meaningful change in this world, and is sort of new to critical left of center, even radical thinking in that way. So on some level, maybe he's to be forgiven, or at least understood, but not coming out of the political education that many of us engage, he's going to be at least in that way limited. But he raises a couple things to defend his point about why the left should be more willing to engage in cryptocurrency. For instance, he says Bitcoin saved WikiLeaks, that when WikiLeaks was cut off from traditional banking from attracting revenue, people could invest in them through Bitcoin. And my point is, how could it be argued that this saved them when Julian Assange is currently a political prisoner, and WikiLeaks has been returned and able to bring in revenue from those other traditional financial mechanisms. So in other words, without political power, the ability to get paid in Bitcoin hasn't helped WikiLeaks at all, because Julian Assange has been in solitary confinement and a political prisoner for what, almost a decade now? I don't even know how long. So I can't agree with that. He talks about that he says, well, the left should be interested in cryptocurrency because people like Hillary Clinton have come out and said publicly that it is destabilizing the dollar and a dangerous thing. So if it's dangerous to people like Hillary Clinton, we should see it as a positive. To the extent I understand that as a starting point, but that shouldn't be an analysis. And it doesn't mean that why she's saying it's destabilizing the dollar is something that we should think is that she's talking to us. So in other words, she's worried about elite investment, not an uprising of the poor. So a destabilization, any devaluing of the dollar is going to impact her class, peers, and investors. It's not going to have an impact. She's not worried about what we're doing, and she's not worried about the threat of the poor uprising with crypto and overturning the dollar. So she's not looking at it in that way. She's looking at it as to the extent that people will, in terms of major investment and venture capital, move away from supporting or other countries or businesses who are forced to, like the petrodollar, buy products like oil using the dollar as the standard, propping it up around the world. She's looking at it from the perspective of venture capitalists who are investing in that and reaping the rewards from that. She's not looking at this situation and saying, oh, all these poor people are about to invest in Bitcoin and have a revolution. That's not what she's saying. So it's not even his analogy doesn't really work in that way. Then, of course, there is what gets ignored, a reality here that keeps getting ignored, that cryptocurrency has a whole bunch of tycoons and billionaires at the top of it. So this idea that we can get in it and turn it into something, you got the Winklevoss twins are already billionaires. The early investors, again, who are already in there, they have $3 billion each. Michael Saylor, Matthew Rose. So it's, in other words, it's the same venture capitalist elite making all of the money, who have already invested. They have already bought it up. So when people are investing, for instance, in Bitcoin and going through platforms like Coinbase to perform their purchases and exchanges, all they're doing is enriching these people. When you buy Bitcoin at this point, all you're doing is increasing the stock value of the coins that they actually own, because most people can't even afford an actual whole coin at this point. So you're only buying percentages. But these are the folks that are already in the game. So this idea that we can now jump in is mythology. Is just mythology. All right. Let's see. Glenn also says the left has fallen on state-based solutions, which is a defeatist mentality. He and the Bitcoin socialists were making this argument, and again, this speaks to the point that I think we all keep missing. The goal shouldn't be to replace a failed state or a failed banking arrangement with something that is a wild west of unregulated, unmonitored, what's the word? Having no responsibility to people who are in that society. I don't think that's what we want here. I'm not advocating an erosion of the ability for society to democratically regulate its wealth and distribution of that wealth. I'm not advocating that at all. So this idea that we want to get away from state-based institutions because that's an imperial, a non-radical thing, I think misses the point. Yeah, we don't want the imperial state, we won't want the exploitative state, but we want there has to be some sort of organized society and hierarchy and that is beholden and responsible to democratically elected, perhaps, et cetera, and so forth. But there has to be some sort of oversight. And this also walks us away from the traditions of our most radical political movements in this country that have often said, we not only do we need a governing apparatus, but we're willing to go to the international community because the state here has failed to defend Black people. So the idea isn't to say we don't want any organized power structure at all. It's to say that we just don't want it to be exploitative and punitive. And the idea that crypto is going to create that stateless utopia is, I think, again, part of the mythology here. Glenn Greenwald makes the comparison of the early internet to the early rise of crypto as well, by saying that we should get into crypto in a way that not we as in black people, but we as in the left didn't get into the internet. And he seems to ignore the military origins of the internet, the venture capital origins of the internet, the inability for poor, disorganized, struggling groups to pool their resources or to organize themselves to invest in a new technology. And again, suggests that it's a technological problem that is creating the inequality that we suffer. This is not a technological problem. This is a political problem. You cannot solve a political problem with tech. So blockchain, cryptocurrency is not going to solve anything. And the internet has created more wealth for a tiny elite, created more hostility in the world, has not done anything to end war, to close gaps in inequality, et cetera, and so forth and whatever. So why would we think that crypto is going to do that and that we can already get into it? And as I'm already showing you here, the early investors are already there. There's no room for poor people to somehow now get in it and turn it into some sort of revolutionary entity. Glenn Greenwald also, by the way, keeps defining the left as the squad and liberal Democrats. So that's another reason why I think he's flawed in this whole thing. Let's see. A couple other things, because he keeps saying powerful notice need to see to others, never explain how the power, right. They keep saying that that crypto can be powerful, but but they never explain how it can be powerful in making change when you spend most of the time saying tech can be good or bad. So anyway, to the point that Dedrick and I were getting at, they never come back and explain how this is going to change anything. By the way, Glenn then says he keeps using the phrase crypto curious. I think I answered this already. Andray and Glenn were asking in their conversation about what are NFTs, and I think I just basically explained it. It's just another way of creating something that venture capitalists and elite can invest in. And if they don't invest in it, and if you don't have the popularity to get a whole bunch of people to invest in it, it's not going to do anything. So it's not a revolutionary. All right. Let me stop there because I don't want to go too much over and disrespect my next guest, who I'm very interested in talking with. So let's take a quick pause for the cause. But hopefully we can continue having. Well, I will continue to bring up these flawed approaches to crypto, etc. Anyway, let's continue to do that and try to put some dents in this powerful propaganda machine that is promoting this nonsense of technology and currency as a solution to political problems. Anyway, quick break. We'll come right back. And let's get into some black and white psychology here. I mix what I like. All right, joining me now, and please correct me if I'm mispronouncing your name, Evan Auguste or Augusta. You got to unmute yourself real quick, and then let me make sure I'm getting.
So it's Evan Auguste, the Haitian way, Evan Auguste, but
Auguste. I love it. No. I want to get it right. I'm down with the correct pronunciation. I'm definitely down with Haiti. So appreciate that. Evan Auguste is with us. Right on. First of all, among many other things, I just want to quickly let folks know Evan is past student circle chair for the Association of Black Psychologists and co-author of an article we're going to look at here, at least a little bit, why the APA's apology for promoting white supremacy falls short. So before we get into that article, let's set some of the parameters, some of the basics for those who might not be aware. We're looking at the American Psychological Association. We're talking about the Association for Black Psychologists. Could you talk about a little bit the history and positioning of these two organizations and why the latter has now to come out and say something about the former?
Yeah, of course. So the American Psychological Association right now is the single largest right, conglomerate Association of Psychology and Mental Health Work in the United States, and take ownership of a lot of the legacy that psychology and mental health has had in this country. And so for people that don't know, this is one of my, I think it's like a, really critical history. Around, it was 1967, where the American Psychological Association, I'm gonna say the APA from here on out, invited Dr. Martin Luther King to speak on the needs of social scientists in the civil rights movement. Because up to that point, I don't think it should be a surprise to anybody, a lot of psychological research, a significant portion was dedicated towards models of deficit. When I say models of deficit, I mean ideas that African-American culture and people were psychologically, biologically, socially inferior. And this was what was arising. Like the tension between Black people's interacting with society was giving rise to mental health problems, discord, disruption. And so there was a push, right, towards trying to center the humanity of Black people by, right, some of the foundational legendary Black psychologists. So the APA invited Martin Luther King Jr. to speak on, okay, what can social scientists do for the civil rights movement? Martin Luther King spoke at length about the need for a creative maladjustment, the idea that just because somebody is stressed or traumatized, that doesn't necessarily mean they're ill. In a lot of ways, those reactions are healthy ones to a society that is ill to its core, and the need to center that, right, in mental health work and psychological work. I think the year following, they might have also voted in Arthur Clarke, famous for the Clarke-Doll study. He and his partner, Mamie Clarke, the Clarke-Doll study. So there was a sense among the APA that, okay, we're doing it. We're doing the right thing. We got our Black president. We had Martin Luther King. But in terms of actual material action, right, the shifting of priorities, there was very little. You still had a field that was disproportionately majority white, male dominated. The research questions were still those that really centered on deficits, biology. You could find studies on that. Honestly, there's still a lot of those studies going on in nooks and crannies in the field today. So the year following, you had some 200 Black psychologists and Black psychologists who stormed out of the APA conference in California, like sick of how this field, which claims ownership over the mental health, the well-being, the spirit, the soul of the country, was completely inept and completely failing to take action. Even that Martin Luther King speech, if you go back and read some of the original documents after he was assassinated, there was still some like muddying the waters on whether or not they messed with MLK at that time. They left and formed the Association of Black Psychologists. There was a President, Robert Williams. I think he was the first president. Created a 10-point plan, leveraging the work of the Black Panthers, of course, to shift the
and
field.
It's not the Robert and Mabel Williams. This is another Robert Williams that on a previous show we actually went through. I forgot who was my guest. Was it Dr. Utsi? But we went through, I think it was Sean Utsi. We went through some of his early rubrics for assessing Black psychological health or something to that effect. Anyway, sorry, but I just want to be clear on that. And while I've already interrupted you, let me just say also that 1968 was also, as I was reading this in your article, I thought, wow, because it's also the same year the African Heritage Studies Association broke away from the African Studies Association for almost the exact same reasons. So that was, with Dr. Clarke and them doing that. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, this is a great point, right? Because there was an energy, like an undoubted like energy, right? Because you could find similar passion, similar purpose in the creation of the National Association of Black Social Workers. Like you could go through it. There was a movement to center, right, the Black communities, Black people, Black spirits. So those psychologists did that. Robert Williams cycled around to about, I want to say over 100 psychology departments, this 10-point plan for protecting and increasing the workforce of Black psychologists, the vast majority of which either ignored or denied, declined to institute. And the following year, you had the Black Student Association, I believe, which would become the Association of Black Psychologists Student Circle, stormed the stage. And there's a funny quote, if you go back and read some of the papers, of the president at the time saying, like, they're doing this again? This happened again? And so the Association of Black Psychologists would merge with those students to become the association that we have now. So that's some of like the history of Black psychologists recognizing that the field proper was wholly inadequate, in a lot of ways maintaining harm at the state level, federal level, community level, individual level of Black communities and Black people.
All right, right on. So with that little bit of a background, we saw this story came out at the end of August, this article that you co-authored, why the APA's apology for promoting white supremacy falls short. While the mea culpa details many of the past racist practices in psychology, it largely omits a key portion of this history. So if we could, let's start with let's start with what was the APA's apology. What did they say, and why did they feel compelled to come out and apologize at this point in time?
Yeah, so there's a lot to that question, right? One, I think we all saw, and we've discussed in AB Sci, I'm sure a lot of people have discussed this as well. There's like a parallel cultural moment to that time in 1967, 1968, where you have a lot of Black leadership within APA. There's a larger kind of cultural zeitgeist in terms of centering, or a veneer of centering Black lives. And so in this moment, you already had the American Psychiatric Association put out an apology. And so the APA wanted to, I believe they were already late to that, wanted to hop on something that already should have been done. And so what the APA apology entailed, and I also want to be clear that a lot of the people who were attempting to put in work, were contributing to it. I know a few of them, and they do really, really good work. And so I don't want to center this on the individuals, but rather the systems that we need to be critiquing and continuing to push forward. But it entailed working with, I think it's the Cummings Center, to do an attempted thorough historical overview of psychology's role in promoting racism within the U.S., and also the APA specific role of promoting racism within the U.S. and white supremacy within the U.S. Kind of do that thorough historical overview, and then put forth several propositions admitting to the harm that was they participated in or were complicit in, as well as instituting several, I guess, like understandings in terms of conceptually how racism continues to act and where their allegiances should lie moving forward. So that was like what the apology kind of entailed. That's what it sought to do.
And I actually had read, oh man, let me grab this real quick, because there was something in there. Let me see if I can find this real quick. Should have had it ready, but there was something in their original statement that I thought was interesting. If I could get it to this to, oh, it's not. All right, maybe I'm not gonna be able to find it. Anyway, so let me just, I'll have to scrap that for now. It looks like I thought the original, because where is it? I had the whole thing, because I've read their original statement apologizing, and they said, we should have done this earlier. We acknowledge that something to the effect that Black people have been saying we needed to correct this for some time, and there was something that they started earlier this year. There was an initiative they started, or last year after George Floyd, maybe to get involved in responding, and then they had this self-reflective moment, and then they decided to come out with this grand apology. Anyway. So let me just pull your essay back up here, your article back up here, because you say here at the end of October the APA released an official. Here's where I had it. So here's where it will be. There we go. Duh. This is the apology to people of color, and there are my notes popping up. From a resolution adopted from October 29th, this is what I was looking at, consistent with its February 21st commitment to catalog the long history of harms to people of color and to inform an apology and a path forward towards healing and reconciliation. APA commissioned historical research by the Cummings Center for History and Psychology at the University of Akron. In addition, recognizing that many existing historical records and narratives have been centered in whiteness, APA also concluded that it was imperative to capture oral history and lived experiences of communities of color, so commissioned a series of listening sessions and surveys, which also inform this resolution by Jernigan and Associates Consulting. So it sounded like it sounded like a very professional response. A very PR response. Mm-hmm. The consulting firm is brought in. They say, offer this apology, but then here you all come to say, wait a minute. While you're acknowledging that you were complicit in contributing to systemic inequalities and having hurt many people through racism, racial discrimination, and denigration of people of color, you note a number of things that I would like us to elaborate on. So, for instance, you say here, that more than 200 Black psychologists would go on to found the first country's oldest independent ethnic psychological association, as we just discussed, the ABPSI, Association of Black Psychologists, in 1968. And then you say here that while the apology details many of the past racist practices in psychology, it largely omits a key portion of this history: how the fields of psychology and psychiatry colluded with the state to suppress rights, liberties, and in many cases, political freedom. Indeed, this history led the former president-elect of ABPSI, Bobby Wright, to conclude that the discipline had historically been leveraged to wage war against Black communities, end quote. I'd like us to unpack that a little bit. And by the way, folks, we're going to be discussing Bobby Wright again in more detail on Friday's show. So please, obviously, come back for that. But first, this part about what is the history of the APA's relationship and collusion with the state to suppress rights and liberties.
Of course. So there's two ways that I'm thinking about that, right? First, and I also want to preface this by saying I wanted to make sure that sometimes articles and responses can be I want to say reactionary out of hand, and not necessarily consider the work that had been done. And so the only things that are included in this article are things I know for a fact that people involved in the apology decided not to include for one reason or another. And so one of the understandings that was voiced was there's an idea that there was a schism, like a professional boundary between psychology and psychiatry that made psychiatry responsible for what they did, psychology responsible for what we did. And for me, that's an artificial boundary, right? When you think about psychology, it's not necessarily, again, a boundaried profession. It's a genre of work on society, And so when we consider what that genre of work is, I also wanted to throw in Fanon understood psychiatry as an auxiliary of the police, right? Social control that rendered individuals invisible in order to protect what was perceived as a larger group of sanctioned individuals. And so that history that, again, the APA and psychologists in this country were leveraging what wasn't considered in the apology. And when you consider, again, that the history of psychiatry, I go into detail about a very brief history around ideas of drapetomania, ideas of protest psychosis. And not just that these are diagnoses and conceptions, these are things that institutions were built in response to, that people were diagnosed and disappeared in response to, right?
A person's desire for freedom was evidence of mental illness, you wrote. That's, exactly. That there was a protest psychosis among oppressed or Black people, Black men apparently particularly. Anyway, sorry, I just every time that comes up, I have that, I don't know, it's a childish, visceral laugh in reaction to something horrific and insane. But the idea that Black people wanting to not be enslaved was a sign of some sort of psychological failure.
Exactly. And so I saw these things make some cycles on the on social media, and I had expected more of a debate from certain people. I did see a few people make the point that like that was psychiatry. We didn't do that. And again, this is the key problem, because you ignore the tradition from which fields emerge. And psychology within the US emerged from that tradition. So when you look at the first...
so there's a claim that psychology and psychiatry are I thought the only difference was a medical license. But now they're claiming there's a different approach to the study of this?
Yeah. Again, like at this point, I would say there's been substantial professional debate around the boundaries of the profession. And so in this moment, people are trying to maintain those distinctions, those arbitrary lines in terms of the specific, like, we medicate, we do assessment, XYZ, we'll do this type of therapy, you do that. But again, for me, that's a dodge. It's a dodge because you can look at the first American psychologist, G. Stanley Hall, and see when he was writing, it was these understandings of African peoples that he was leveraging, right? He would write consistently and specifically about how freedom had created a more precarious scenario for the country, because African peoples did not know how to handle freedom. African peoples needed proximity to white people so that we could be familiar with one another and understand and help one another. But when he said like help, he's talking about enslavement and white people being able to like save African peoples from their...
Right.
Exactly.
Because enslaved Africans were somehow unclear about their relationship with these white folks. Is that what like they needed more interaction with white folks to be clear about who these people were, please?
Exactly. Right. So and this is the issue, is that there are people are trying to draw sharp distinctions between, no, this is the tradition. And with a lot of these psychiatric hospitals that are built, again, you have psychologists that are doing the diet, sending people there, right? You have psychiatry walking with them, promoting these theories, refining these theories. And so while there's references to that, I was disturbed by the lack of consideration and serious grapple with like the institutions that were built in response to these. Because again, that carries forth to like, when we see some of the ways that psychiatry and psychology are reinforcing and reproducing anti-Blackness today, that's it. If anybody's ever done work in a forensic hospital or a state hospital, you see, it's some of the most disturbing, the actively traumatizing things that you could participate in. Right? And I don't want to speak to every hospital. I want to speak to the ones that I've been to, the people that I've spoken to have done work at these hospitals. But if you want to talk about like what it means to be, marginalized, I've seen Black people be told that like, oh, you're dirty, right? You're not getting out of here. Like I've seen that happen at hospitals, right? You see slurs, epithets get thrown at patients, right? And especially within the context of forensic hospital, where these people by law, the vast majority of these people by law are not guilty, but these are sites where care is understood through a lens of control. And there's not a serious grappling with again, disproportionate, Black people confined there, when Black people are in active crisis, active distress, disproportionately more likely to be forcibly institutionalized, hospitalized, police in response, So we're seeing some policies trying to intervene on that, but that history has to be front and center, because it is actively causing harm among Black peoples.
I love this point that you make in this paragraph here, and I really love the way you even bring the point up that the APA's decision to limit its policy to the U.S. ignores how the field has been used to harm people across the world. So you're talking about not only an African diaspora, but a world's majority people who are defined so-called as people of color, have been impacted by what the APA has done. They've been involved with, I don't know, I don't remember if you mentioned this in this piece specifically, but they've certainly been involved with CIA experiments, and supporting torture and interrogation, but then also specifically, as you point out here, to this issue of Guantanamo Bay. And I gotta say, I had seen, like 2 days before I read your article, I saw the film The Mauritanian. And I don't know if anybody of you have seen this film,
I haven't seen
but it is, I don't know how accurate everything is, but it is remarkably well done. And what it does is it talks about Guantanamo from the perspective of somebody defined as the Mauritanian, as somebody who had been defined as a potential terrorist threat, a true story of someone who was put in Guantanamo for years. And even after he was determined to be not a threat and should be released, I think spent another decade in Guantanamo. And they show from his perspective what that experience was like. And it adds to another level of, I don't know, I felt traumatized just watching it. I can't even imagine experiencing it. So when I read your piece here, and then I'm like, damn, so the APA participated in that, which is still open, which even Obama didn't close. There are still, I think, 20 or so people held there officially, at least, if not more. But anyway, please, this international piece, and then specifically Guantanamo, and anything else you would want to add, please do. Yeah,
and this is the key piece, right? And so I believe it was for quote unquote legal reasons. I think that that specific piece was not able to be included. I think there are people involved in the apology who had lobbied for its inclusion.
You mean the reference to the CIA or?
Yeah, the Hoffman report with as it pertains to Guantanamo Bay. But yeah, the APA was involved in quote unquote optimizing torture techniques to make them like less, or like more humane rather, in the context of Guantanamo. And anybody sitting here now would be like, what the hell? What is that? That is antithetical to a profession that centers, right, mental health, mental well-being. But then that's where you think about the fact that the APA as an organization, in a lot of ways, got to start in terms of supporting the state, right? Not necessarily healing the people, optimizing, war efforts. I think it was in 1907? Might have been around 1907. Again, like you're talking about optimizing war efforts. That's how a lot of the field really took hold in the U.S. is IQ testing, perfecting which person goes into which battalion. So when you see that right there, it's a continuation of that legacy, and to not grapple with that, sufficiently, if you're going to apologize for the framework of white supremacy. Not talk about how you've optimized state violence within our borders, outside of our borders. It's dangerous. It's very dangerous, and it causes significant harm. Right, the inability to critique that and see that as a mission within your profession is. I couldn't. That's one of the things that deeply disturbed me. That deeply disturbed a lot of my colleagues when they were reading it as well.
Not that you move on to something easier to deal with, but you talk about here, in recent years, we have seen Black youth suicide rates steadily increase. At the same time, the desire for culturally grounded mental health support is on the rise. Despite this history, the APA continues to be the primary organization for establishing codes of ethics, lobbying state licensing boards, certifying and educating training clinicians in the field of psychology. So I wanted to ask you about ABPSI, the Association of Black Psychologists, and how you all approach the field, and why what you said here in this article is so important as it relates to your work. In other words, if you all are out here, in my mind, I have a bias. One of my closest comrades is one of your colleagues. I have a bias. I've been invited to your conferences. I've seen a little bit about how you all get down and do your work. And it's truly remarkable because as somebody, even real quick, man, even a point you raised earlier in that piece that the history of the medical institution's approach to Black people or African people has created a lingering distrust in a justifiable distrust in the medical apparatus. The same thing has happened psychologically. And whereas a lot of us would benefit from visits to people doing the work that you do, we look at it like, even I was raised in a household that said, from a perspective of European communists, even, they were saying the field of psychology can't be trusted. They're just trying to they just try to attune you mentally to accept your place in this capitalist hellscape. So even radicals of all stripes are sometimes conditioned. Look, we don't want to engage. So when Black psychologists come out to do the work that you're trying to do, to what extent is the APA's influence in creating this negative impression of the field impacting your work? And then even specifically, as you talk about here, as you all are trying to deal with the specific ravages of Black life and specifically suicide rates, how is the APA negatively impacting or limiting or a barrier to the work that you all are trying to do?
Yeah, there's so many pieces to that. I'm sure you know. Is the first way is, and then I want to go through the APA, and then I want to get to the work that ABSI is doing. The first way is the stranglehold on the field, like we talk about, right? In terms of licensure, certification, education, and training programs, they have a stranglehold on that, and it should be no surprise that there's a significant disparity. There's, I believe, 4% or less Black psychologists in this country. And so I talk to my friends about this all the time, wow. Right? We're talking about there's a mass kind of celebrity cultural movement. We need to destigmatize mental health. We need to get more people in contact with, Black mental health professionals, culturally grounded resources. And then I'm sitting here like, there's a subtle disservice, not a complete disservice, with telling people that infrastructure is there when it's not. I have a lot of friends who come to me, ask me like, yo, I want like some culturally grounded mental health resources. I'm in this state. I have somebody from this background. I'm like, I love that there's that call right now, but the infrastructure is being hindered because of this. You have licensing exams where if you talk to anybody in the field, they're a profit-seeking venture. The licensing exam in a lot of ways is based on outdated research. There are very few people. I don't think I've ever talked to anybody who believed that the licensing exam is something that increases your capability as a clinician. It's a profit-seeking venture that seeks to extract additional money at the last stage of somebody's program after they've been in there for like 8 years, right? In terms of school and education. The fact that a lot of departments are fine if they have we have like our 1, 2, maybe 3 race people. And then we're going to get the rest of the department is going to be, this white person studies this kind of anxiety. This white person studies that other type of anxiety, right? The field as a whole is not supporting, promoting the traditions that people have spent decades, if not centuries, right, cultivating around like Black psychology, Black theory, Black well-being, Black spiritedness, African-centered spiritedness. It is very difficult to find funding, to find places that are willing to support that work. And a lot of this is based on, again, like that APA stranglehold. I have a lot of friends who have done, if you put their CV, you put their resume in terms of what they've done in terms of service work, clinical work, research with communities. I want to put research on the side, service and clinical work with Black communities. And could not find internship because there's so much of an emphasis on training people to be in the academy, right? So we don't really care about service. We don't really care about community work. That's cool. That's like garnish on the side. But like, are you getting these papers out? It's a severe.
By the way, as you talk, is there a relationship? Forgive, this is maybe a tangent. I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but I'm wondering, is your work hampered at all by what I see, at least, as a problem of an overemphasis on celebrity, self-help, and life coaching type stuff? Like, In other words, where I see a lot of Black people being attracted to those areas as opposed to actual clinical, psychological, like, so in other words, the help you need to get over your depression is a life coach, or to learn how to, repeat some, I don't know.
Yeah, I hear what you're asking.
Do you know what I mean? Anyway, I don't know.
It's a great question. It's a good question. It's a nuanced question, because on the one end, right, here I am talking about the ways that the APA has a stranglehold on this field, And so when we're talking about the ABPsi, I don't want to, falsely promote that ABPsi is particularly like representative of the vast majority of Black psychologists that are practicing right now, right? You have a lot of Black psychologists, and I'm not sitting here trying to, also dismiss what Black psychologists on the whole have to do to get to that position, to do that work. But you have a lot of people who are comfortable leveraging the APA, the psychological tradition as is, right? In some ways, people see, this is what Arthur Clarke said, right? When I think Joseph White did introduce the idea of Black psychology, Arthur Clarke was saying, like, there's no Black psychology. We do psychology as Black people. He made that kind of key point. And so you have a lot of people who are comfortable with that tradition. And so not everybody's going to be leveraging this tradition, this scholarship that we're talking about. So that's the first thing. I want to say that, no, you should just go see a Black psychologist off rip, because that person will be able to have this kind of, like, that's not true. The second thing is because there's significant economic, socioeconomic, discriminatory barriers to completing this program. I know so many brilliant people who have not completed this degree, not because they're not brilliant, because of these hurdles that we're talking about. You can't ask somebody that they have to go to, but we need people doing other work. We need various forms of healers. We recognize other forms of healers. The Association of Black Psychologists, we welcome, right, people that practice all different types of healing. And so I wouldn't, again, I don't want to boundary the professional like that. I want to speak about a specific genre of work. And so you have some celebrities, you might have some life coaches. I know a life coach who leverage this genre of work, who do engage in work in this type of way. And then you have other people, right? That's what I mean with the nuance. Like, you have other people who are kind of leveraging that other kind of tradition where, I can see, like, you're not giving somebody you don't have a firm grasp of the concepts that you're talking about. In a lot of ways, you're promoting, exactly as you said, asking somebody to become comfortable within a capitalist structure, comfortable with the misery that it means to exist in a capitalist structure. So I would say it depends on how that person engages with the spirit of the field.
Right on. Yeah, I was just curious in terms of again, that's just okay. So we've exhausted my notes on your article, so I just want to make sure before we move on that if there's anything else I didn't ask you to bring up that you would want to bring up, and make sure that we're clear on. And one of them is just would be a little bit of an elaboration on the distinction in terms of the approach that ABPsi uses. In other words, when you're saying that there are Black psychologists who are saying I'm practicing psychology as Black as opposed to practicing Black psychology, talk a little bit, if you could, about the distinction you're drawing.
It's that saying, right, that I'm not a human being having a spiritual experience. I'm a spirit being having a human experience. And I'm having that human experience with an African face. Right? So the understanding that my spiritual experience is informed by the Blackness of my present, the Africanness of my past, right? And so it's a dedication to that communal sense of being. When you look at the work of the Association of Black Psychologists, it's a dedication towards not just the individual, but understanding that the community structure, the political structure, the social structures also have to be intervened upon. So I could go, in history. Not everybody knows. I do forensic psychology, clinical and forensic psychology. It's wild to me that people don't know about the work of Thomas Hilliard. Right? We could learn about the Grissos, all the people in the world. People don't know about a Thomas Hilliard who, was key in terms of like optimizing and intervening on the racism of the jury selection procedures in the Angela Davis trial. People don't know that story, which is incredible history. if I bring it forward.
Hold on, break that down real quick, because I don't know it. Break it down real quick. What does that mean? He intervened in yeah. What does that mean?
So I want to say two things. Cause I know we don't have too much time, so I'm gonna send you an article.
Okay.
Your friend actually sent me the article, so he knows the story. He introduced me to the story. Yeah.
Why didn't he tell me? That's jacked up.
Yeah, right.
Dude, he didn't tell me. That's jacked up. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
So it was Thomas Hilliard, along with a lot of the, I believe it was the Bay Area branch of the Association of Black Psychologists, were asked by Angela Davis and I believe some of her representation to basically give an assortment of psychological assessments looking at the jury's understanding of race, the Black Panthers, communism, sex, gender, in order to avoid the biasing of the jury sample, and so they conducted interviews with jury alongside Angela Davis as well. And so that's a really brief story. I'm gonna send you the article.
Yeah. That's deep though. So they stacked the jury in her favor, in other words, as best they could. That's what they were trying to do.
Or to prevent the opposite, right?
Right on.
In terms of contemporary work right now, that looks like as a member of the Association of Black Psychologists, I helped co-develop the Sawubona Healing Circles. The Sawubona Healing Circles are a community first aid response to anti-Black racial trauma. We've trained over 100 community leaders and clinicians, and we've rolled out, again, this is free, like emotional support from this kind of tradition that I'm talking about that has been rolled out in response to the Black Lives Matter uprisings last summer. We had them in response to the crisis and the abuses at the border for Haitian people, the assassination of the Haitian president, during the trial of Derek Chauvin. We had them. So this is the type of like recognition of mass political and racial trauma that people feel throughout a diaspora that we need to attend to. We train legal professionals. We had a contract with the Bar Association in Montgomery. Might have been Montgomery or it was Baltimore. Again, like reducing the harm, right? How anti-Blackness informs these professions. And so Black psychology is that, right? It's a recognition that psychology, and as it's taught in most schools, there's an idea that psychology starts in like Greece from that intellectual method.
Well, everything started in Greece and Rome.
Exactly.
Every single damn thing.
Yeah. But if you look at the work of like a Bobby Wade Nobles, Linda James Meyer, Cheryl Grills, it's the recognition that people have been grappling with the idea of the mind and the spirit as long as people have been. And so you can look at the societies of Egypt, of the Kikongo, of Southern Africa, of Zulu. You could see there's key concepts and genius around healing, around being, around spirit that we can leverage for our own healing, for our own understanding of how to be in community and in society with one another. And that's what African-centered psychology seeks to do. It's leveraging indigenous knowledge and understanding that there's a collective brilliance that has been kind of precluded from informing the field. And so it seeks to center those narratives. And so within that, the Association of Black Psychologists has rolled out their own licensure, their own certification programs, their own body of ethics that speaks to how a Black psychologist needs to be committed to not just the individual, but the community. That service is a key aspect of that. The political aspect is a key aspect of that. And unlike a lot of training programs, we do emphasize the need to engage in service work because, like we're saying, there's a severe dearth. And so it's in a lot of ways that there's a more extreme calling when you take the role, the mantle of a Black psychologist that you need to engage in.
Before we wrap, I just wanted to quickly, and I think I put the link in the show notes already, but if not, I'll make this available. This is the full statement of the Association of Black Psychologists in response to APA. And there's just one piece, because you already mentioned that I had highlighted, where you talk about Samuel Cartwright and drapetomania, causing Black people to have an uncontrollable urge to run away from their masters. And this one I didn't know about, but I suffer from this. I have always suffered from this. And I'm glad to see it identified as an actual issue. Diastasia ethiopica was evidenced by disobedience, answering disrespectfully, or refusing work. My goodness. If you all could have diagnosed me with this and given me a certificate to bring to my jobs going back many years to get out of certain trouble, particularly in the military, this would have been perfect.
Yeah.
Don't be mad at me. I suffer from dysasia ethiopica.
Listen, don't ask me to say it either. There's two things I want to say real quick too. So the Association of Black Psychologists, we also have a regular show every other Monday, or the first and third Monday, creating Zola Mondays. Zola is another one of those constructs that we want to leverage in this context about collective love that promotes self-healing, led by Linda James Myers, Jojo Hickson, Harvey Linder. And today, actually at noon Eastern time, so in 2 hours, there's going to be an extended conversation around the APA apology as well by some of the people who, a lot of the people who also helped to write the AB side response, who were involved in the initial conversations with the APA. So that's a really good conversation to look out for.
Hey, when you can, email me the link, and then I'll add that both to the show notes here, and we'll put it out on Twitter as well, so people can check that thing out. And
then what?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
There's two more things. One, again, we've had a lot of great guests on that. We've had your friend, we had Frank Wilderson on that. We argued back and forth. That was great. We've had, who's actually a family friend, Dr. Julius Garvey. And I think a lot of people know, or hope people know, that there's currently a movement to pardon his father towards
That's
Biden.
right.
That's picking up a lot of steam. So I'll send you a link if you can include that as well, so people could sign on and get involved.
Absolutely.
And then the third thing is, I just want to thank you, because you don't know this. Again, I started doing my research in my program in like 2016, 2017. And I was looking at a lot of your videos. I was looking at a lot of your interviews to get more knowledge about people like Bobby Wright, about people that were legendary in this field. And so it's just an honor for me to be at the end. I did my dissertation like on Thursday, and to finally be able to talk to you. So this has been my honor. Thank you so much.
Hey, no, man. Hey, I appreciate that. And honestly, hey, man, honestly, thank you for that, because those kinds of statements are really the number one reason why I've ever wanted to be in some sort of broadcasting. So I appreciate it. I definitely appreciate that. And congratulations on the dissertation, and good luck going forward. And I'll tell you now, like, I know you all have the other platform that I'm going to get introduced to later today, but anytime you need another outlet, you or your colleagues, your crew are always welcome here. And we'll look to have you back on to talk about a number of different things going forward. So I appreciate that, Evan Auguste.
Oh, there it is.
Yes, sir. And no, I appreciate your work, man. Association of Black Psychologists, big shout out to you and your whole crew. And I look forward to building with you all much more. And you're always welcome, man. So thank you very much again for coming through this morning. And like I said, look forward to the next time.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks again to Brother Evan. I really appreciated all of that. And to our colleagues in common who put this thing together. Always like working with and hearing from the Association of Black Psychologists. Before we get out of here, though, and I definitely want to thank also Dedrick Muhammad. But I just wanted to see real quick if there were any comments or questions that I can respond to quickly before we get out of here. Please repost them if I can't find them, as I just quickly scan through some of the chat here. APA is a torture organization. Right on. Lockstep with the DOD. Yeah. Fanon definitely outlined the madness of colonial psychiatric institutions. Yeah, Evan hit that point well. Right on. De Beers sells synthetics. Good Lord. Yeah, no pun intended, but this shit is insane. No doubt about it. Yeah, Fanon, I mean, it's crazy that so much of what he said is right on. So what will APA do after the apology? Nothing. That was the point. That's just my humble opinion. Student Association co-chairs AB side, right on. I just like to talk, there's some truth to that, and I don't get to talk as much as I want. So how about that? Yeah, just call me a dreptomaniac too. No, sometimes when I have a few minutes and I'm not rushed, I do like to see what's been said in the chat. And if there are any comments or questions, I can, definitely Dreptomania still cracks me up. And that new one, that or at least new to me, Dysastasia Ethiopica. Evidenced by disobedience, answering disrespectfully, and refusing to work. Do you know how many times, in fact, in sixth grade, I remember that was the year I learned the word subordination. I was sent to the office and the teacher said for being subordinate. And I was like, what the hell? I don't even know what that means. But I was like, I'm him. All right. Anyway, good people. I really appreciate you all coming through. Oh, word. Oh, what's up, Devin? Islamic scholars in Mali, Egypt diagnosing OCD, ADHD, depression hundreds of years before Europeans. I'm sure. Nah, man, Devin's tripping. Everything started in Greece and Rome. Anyway, listen, I appreciate you all coming through, and please do continue to support BPM. Hit the like, share, subscribe, and join buttons. Tell a friend is here. Doctor says a lot of stuff coming up, so hit the bell. Make sure you get those notifications. And if you're seeing this later, appreciate you as well. And if you got something to say that we didn't get to, do like my man Pierre says over there in that good comedy hype channel.
Put it in the comments.
And we'll catch you next time right here at I Mix What I Like Live throughout the BPM network. See you on all the other podcasts and other so whatever outlets there are. And we'll be back again with the Remix Morning Show tomorrow morning right here at 8 a.m. with more of that good boom bap breakfast. So thanks again to my guests. Thanks to all of you for coming through. Thanks to all of you who will see and hear this later. And peace if you're willing to fight for it, as the good late great Fred Hampton just celebrated another birthday the other day. We used to say peace because we know you're willing to fight for it. So catch you next time. Thanks.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.